NRL Fantasy Buy, Hold, Sell, Round 11. We've got a special guest here, the big man, Jay-Z. I'm going to start off firm here. What is your current rank?
89th overall, Longy. I know lost ranks this week, so it was a bit higher last week.
Mate, scorching hot, scorching hot. I'm a lowly 327 right now, so a little behind you, but making up that ground each week. So hopefully going to catch you soon. Look, good to have you on, man. Top 100, pretty exciting times. Before we get into it, are you feeling like you're going to win this year?
Look, there's been a few weeks where I've probably picked the wrong captain or vice captain, and if I nailed that, I'd probably be a lot closer to it. I'm not super thrilled with the way the buys are looking. I don't want to force myself into like dud purchases for the sake of buy planning, so probably not. But top 50, I think, is on the cards.
Oh, mate, you got to believe in yourself. How many trades you got left?
After this week, 16.
Okay, that's pretty good. That's not a bad number. You saved a few here and there. I reckon you're a shot. Look, I personally am believing I'm going to win, so you might as well just play like that, right? And I've got less trades than you, but hey, look, let's jump into it. So buy, hold, sell. We've got a big one this week, and before we do get into those options, just a quick shout out to a couple of the sponsors here. So TBC Live is the first one. Awesome game. I've got a link in the description to download the app. Essentially, what they do is it's a live predictions game where you can pick different things happening. So if you're watching the game, you think, Xavier Coates is going to score a try, you can pick that and you get rewarded based on those predictions. And the SRL as well. They've just had their grand final, Simulation Rugby League. I'll drop the link in the description for that as well. Let's jump right into it here. So first up, buys. Tolu Kola, hottest option of the week. He's a guy who's averaged something like 70 points when he's played fullback in the past. Just an absolute beast. Are you hot on this one, Jay-Z?
Yeah, I was pretty high on him as soon as Turbo went down. I owned Turbo so I could do like a straight swap there. My concern is that he doesn't play around 13 and his fixtures for the next 3 weeks are a bit dicey. Not sure if that'll hurt him too much. Like he seems a pretty low risk option given he's only 450k. What do you reckon, Lenny?
I'm hot on him, man. I think he's a must-have. The upside is huge. It's about 7 weeks without Turbo. I reckon he's an upgrade on Turbo in terms of fantasy production. I think just based on the way he played previously, look, a lot of those, we talked about this before, a lot of those highlights were against the Dogs, against the Tigers when there were lesser teams last year. But I think he's just going to keep pounding the rock, looking for those opportunities. He's got Brisbane this week. We saw how Blaze Talangi went against them. Why couldn't Cole do the same thing? So, yeah, he's my first buy for this week. Like, I'm absolutely locked in on this one, and I'm fitting the other trades around Kohler as that first option. The other thing is you got that center wing fullback door. Can't say no to that, right?
So that's I guess that's a question that I have. I know with my team I have a fair few wing fullbacks and centers, especially if you've got the likes of like a KO Weeks and a Davey Armstrong in your team as well. Is such thing as too many wingers and too many centers?
If we had a situation like previous years where we had cash in the bank and we had those guns that were surefire and we were making money, I would say, yeah, for sure. You want those top scorers across your roster. But none of us have made enough cash this year to have a fully stacked roster. So what I'm starting to think might be the play here is you just grab the value and then you just effectively use loopholes on the guys you don't really trust. So with a KO Weeks, for example, he's been pretty solid, but an Armstrong, he could score you 15 or 60 any given week. So he's a guy I'd love in that loophole slot early in the round. I'm thinking that way. And I'm thinking there's going to be enough buys every week and there's always an injury where you're usually going to have 2 guys that you can use for a loophole, right? So as much as we hate them, we kind of love them.
There is always an injury. That's is standing very true this season, especially to just significant players. Like there's probably been as many injuries as there has been previously, but geez, you look at the names that are out, like your Clearys and your Turbos. Jesus, when does it end?
It's all in the spine, 100%. Next spine guy here, Scotty Drinkwater, and this is one I know you're hot on, so I'll throw him to you. Why are you looking so closely at this guy?
Scott Drinkwater is not only one of my favourite players in the NRL, he was a big reason why I shot up the ranks last season. So he's a guy where his team's attack revolves around him. So there are a few teams like that. The Knights with Ponga, South with Latrell, Cowboys with Drinkwater. Everything they do gets a touch from Drinky. And this season, while he hasn't quite had the massive boom games that he had last year, I think he had a couple of like 80s, even 100 in there. His base has become a lot better. Like until this week, funnily enough, his lowest score was 36. And that's like in a pretty average Cowboys side. Like their attack is not on song. Last year he absolutely carved up over the Origin period. Like there was a time there where he was in the conversation for the Dally M. Like this guy is an attacking like genius. And his fantasy prowess is second to none as well. He's just a little bit less than what you probably could pay for him, like just under 700k. I think it's a perfect pickup, especially with the lack of like genuine guns. This guy has the potential to perform at like a 55 to 60 average over the period.
Oh, I'm with you there, man. He's also basically no chance of Origin as well. So yeah, you look at that, and he could play the lights out like he did last year, and he's not going to be in the conversation basically. So yeah, I think this is a locked in pick. Last year he started slow. He was about 500k at this point of the year, and he got close to 900k at one point, which was absolutely crazy. So yeah, I'm red hot on this too. This is a really good example too of ignoring the break evens, just going, you know what? I like this player. I like the fixture. I'm just going to pull the trigger because I need a wing fullback, and not being too picky about those break evens. So because his break evens, what is it, about 65 points?
Yep.
I'm going to throw it to you. Do you think he beats that score versus South this week?
Oh, he's every chance. Look, if the Dragons can belt South Sydney, I think a side like the Cows with like 5 Origin players can do a number on him too.
I reckon he does. I absolutely reckon he does. I reckon South's kind of cooked. So yeah, he's going to get there. Another guy I think is going to get there, Herbie Farmworth. Look, 599k. I got on this guy last week. I'm happy enough with it. So it was about 47 points. He had the try assist, but it was mostly base stats. And for a center, you know, if you get your 40 points plus attacking stats, if you can be that guy for me, I'm pretty happy with that. The other thing is Herbie Farmworth's fixtures and buy schedule A1. So you got the Tigers this week. I believe he's going to be running at the edge that had Stafford Toa and John Bateman on it. It will no longer have that. Hopefully, he's running at Seyfarth and who else is it? Brent Naden potentially on that edge. That would be absolutely ideal. But we're gonna look into that later. But look, I reckon he's gonna crush it, right? So you get a great buy schedule. You're paying about what he's worth, so you're not getting a big discount on this. But at the same time, there are no A1 guns that I want anyway. So I figured I might as well pay for this guy, get the pod, go through. And I think if you're looking for a center this week, Herbie Farmer's a pretty solid option. The only risk really to me is the injury risk. He looked a little bit gimpy at times last week, but I think he's going to be pretty solid.
Yeah, I think he's a guy like when you think of centers, you think 20 points or 70 points, right? But Herbie is just like this weirdly consistent, like gets a job done. For the Broncos last year, he was running for like 170 meters a game. And even last week against Manly, like he was sitting on about 10 points with 20 minutes left. I remember you were a bit shaky about his score, and then out of nowhere, just like throws 2 offloads, like does those sideways crab runs where he breaks 4 tackles. Like he's a great pick, but like you said, probably paying for what you're going to get. But great for buys.
I mean, that Dolphins schedule, it's pretty good. Round 14 is a bit dangerous, but I'm willing to roll the dice on that and dominate round 13. Look, Sammy Fino, you got in him last week, right?
Yeah, so I snuck him in. I didn't plan on doing it, but I tried to avoid Piakora's 8 points. So I traded in Finu to avoid that.
Didn't we all?
And then Hines got ruled out, and I got Piakora's 8 points anyway. So, but I did avoid buying Scott Drinkwater last week, and so I saved about 30k on that trade. And now that Bateman's out, and Papali'i suspended, so he's pretty much a lock for 80 minutes for the next couple of weeks. Doesn't play around 13, but I think the Tigers have a really good schedule after that. And he's got a 60 in him somewhere. Like he's going to have a boom game at one point. He looks like the dangerous type of ball runner who can throw an offload, who can break the line, break a few tackles. So, hopefully the Tigers improve a bit and he starts seeing a bit of that. But yeah, I like Finer.
Look, if he gets 80, he's a 40, 45 guy without attacking stats. So I'm with you there, 100%. He had that pop game. The other thing I really like as well is I was a bit nervous about this Tigers team because their outside backs can't put 80 minutes together of form, let alone without an injury. So him being the backup center worried me a bit. But Kapoa's on the bench now, which I think he'd be the first drop to move to center for that team. So there have to be multiple injuries for Finu to go back to center, which is what stunted him last week and caused the 32-point game. So I'm with you completely. I've got 620K to spend, and I just can't go away from Finu. Like I just keep going through the list and just thinking, this guy's as good as anyone else. I've got up the rankings and up the dollar list. He's rock solid. He's going to play 80 minutes for at least 8 weeks with Bateman out for that period of time. They'd have the buy in round 13 and then basically no buy until the round 20s sort of area. I think it's round 26, something like that. So yeah, locked in, dual position, middle edge. I've got Carrigan and Cotter in that spot. So I really need some non-origin guys to come through with Plath and Smithies. And I think that can be a nice little sort of 5 to carry me through this period. So yeah, Sammy Finu, Kohler and Finu are the two that I'm targeting this week for my trades. Yeah, red hot option. Dom Young's the last one we got to talk about here. And look, he was on the top of the pod list for us last week. Pretty hyped about the upside. I'll quote myself, he can score you 80 and then he'll score you 15 the next week, is what I said last week. He went and scored the 80. This could be the week where he goes and scores the 15. So I know he's a high volatility player. Jay-Z, I feel like he's not normally the kind of guy that you go for in your sort of player. You like a bit more of that sort of base, right? Am I getting the right read there?
Yeah, I'm definitely someone that probably errs more on the conservative side when it comes to pods like this. I did point out last week that I think he's the type of guy that at some point this season he's going to score 5 tries. And the way last week started, he was on like 60 points after 10 minutes, and I'm going, this guy could like break the score record if they keep this up. But then the Roosters just kept dropping the ball, and they like hit 5 line breaks last week. That's ridiculous. He's a gun. I don't know if I'd do it at his current price. Like, there's probably not that much downside, but as you say, like he can score a 15. And he's almost the reverse of what we were talking about with Scott Drinkwater having an ignorable break even, right? So Dom Young's got a really nice break even, but he can still miss that. He scored minus 12 in a game earlier this season. So not that he's going to replicate that, but you know, it's possible, right? And they're playing the Sharks this week. It's not an easy fixture. The rest of their fixtures are pretty nice, though.
Yeah, the buy schedule is really good too. I know I'm going to call it right because 505K last week was pretty optimal. 556K this week. It's now or never. If you're paying 600K plus for this guy, you're asking for trouble. 556 is probably the last plausible moment. But if you're going to get him, you kind of got to not judge him by his scores and rather judge him by the Roosters' form. So if the Roosters are looking like a team that's playing some relatively expansive footy, Dom Young is a good option. If he scores 10 points in a game where they score 60 points, that's still a win for you and you just keep on rolling with that. If they look like shit and Kiri and Sam Walker are both out of the team, then that's probably going to be goodbye. The other thing is Joey Manu's not playing this week and he has been feeding Dom Young quite a bit. So that could be a bit of a downside, especially in a tough Cronulla matchup as well. Overall, I'm probably not as high on this week. It feels like one of those ones where you had to sort of take the leap before the big score. Right now, I'm also looking at Scott Drinkwater versus Dom Young. It's a 100K gap. Drinkwater has so much more fantasy pedigree and a really nice run of fixtures in the fullback spot, which is better than wing. So, yeah, I'm pretty firmly in the Drinkwater, Herbie Farmworth even. That's a 40K price difference, right? Like, these sorts of guys have much more solid bases and they still have that upside to go big as well. So, yeah, Dom Young, if you dare, but probably not our top option here. Next group we're going to go through is the pods. This is juicy. So, look, Alex Twile's the big one. Try scoring extraordinaire. 534K is a nice price. The PPM for him is fantastic. He's named at lock, which is awesome. Surely a slam dunk option, right, on paper. But I know you and I are both a little bit hesitant on this one. What's holding you back from just running out and grabbing Twile right now?
So Twile's a guy that I've been trying to make happen for like the past 5 seasons because if he plays any semblance of like 50 to 60 minutes, he's just like a PPM monster. Like he doesn't miss tackles. He makes 40 plus a game. He'll run for like 150 meters most games. but he just doesn't get the spot. He never holds that spot. He'll have moments where he'll play 50 minutes for like 4 to 5 weeks, and then he'll just get dropped for someone more dynamic. He's one of those guys where I think he just needs to go play for Des Hasler. Like, just go be Jamin Jolliffe for the Titans.
Yeah.
Go play 60 minutes a game and just get through your work, because I'm not going to say he's underappreciated, because I don't know if he's like the most dynamic middle forward in the competition, but he's a guy that does his job really well. So if he gets an extended run of minutes, like he's a really good purchase, but he's just never had that consistency in his career.
Yeah, I'm with you there. But I mean, sure. So the one thing that worries me is Fanua on that bench, because he has been the starting lock for that team. He hasn't had many games that made me think, you know what, he's got to go, right? So it's got to be a tentative hold on that spot that Twala has. At the same time, though, Clemmer declining minutes, Itokomanu theoretically around the Origin team. Recent form hasn't been the best, but if he's in that Origin team getting less minutes as well, that sort of solids up Twal a little bit through this period. But then I guess you then go, all right, Papali'i comes back next week. Probably comes back on the edge, I would say. But then Seyfarth enters the lock rotation. He was starting lock over Twal earlier this year as well. So it's pretty dicey. He's pretty similar to Madison, though, in that the job security isn't great, but PPM is strong. Twal probably has less job security than Maddo, but the better PPM, right? So it's a gamble you can take. I like Finu a lot more for about 80K less. I think he's just got a much more solid spot in the team. I think in terms of averages, look, if they both played 80 minutes, Twal would out-average him, but Twal's not going to play 80 minutes. So, yeah, I think Twal is one where if you want to take that gamble, go and do it. And I respect the hell out of you, but it's one I'm going to let sail by. I'm going to prefer Finu over him. Madison's the next one here, though. Matto, you into this at all? Like, Cardi's on the bench now. He played a bit of lock last week, played a bit of edge. It's
Matto's tough. Matto's a real tough one, because there was probably a run of maybe 4 to 5 seasons where I would just always end up with Ryan Madison in my team, because he's that good of a fantasy player as long as he's playing either 80 minutes on an edge or like 60 minutes in the middle. But with the emergence of Hopgood at Parramatta, he's fallen down the pecking order. And even Bryce Cartwright has sort of broken out, or at least regained his form to become that sort of high-minute back rower, more dynamic than Maddo. But Madison's like a phenomenal footballer. Like, he's so good. There's no reason why he can't hold that back row spot. And I think while Parramatta is still struggling for answers and they're still trying to get some semblance of form, there's every chance he holds the spot. Now, I'm not saying I'd do it, because there's a world where Parramatta have 3 Origin middle forwards out and he plays like 80 minutes at lock. There's also a world where they have no Origin forwards. Like, it depends on how the selectors go. Is Maguire going to pick Paulo and Reg? Is Queensland going to pick Hopgood? If any of those guys get picked, then he's probably going to be a good enough buy over the Origin period, probably average close to 50. But there's just so many question marks over that side that I think you'd probably rather wait until 13 and see what the go is with the selections, and then you could buy him then for like a short 5 to 6 week thing. And I think one of the issues right now that almost every team's facing is that everyone has used so many trades. So you can't really afford to bring in guys that are only going to serve you a purpose for a very short amount of time, because you're not going to be able to trade them back out, or you're not going to be able to use what they've done for you and upgrade them to a gun later on in the season.
So you're not worried about, it's a relatively low, I guess 31 points, not the lowest break even. He's priced at 38. He's actually in 20% of top 100 teams right now, which is a higher number than I thought it was going to be. But I'm kind of with you there, right? I think Hopgood theoretically gets picked for the team. I think there's a good chance that Junior Paulo makes it back in as well. I think probably RCG might get ignored this time round. But even one of those being picked is probably going to be enough for Madison to get bulk minutes through the middle. With a pretty good buy schedule. So yeah, I don't mind this. The dual position is attractive as well. If you're going to get a guy you don't fully trust, at least having that edge middle dual is kind of more attractive than getting like on a Twal or someone like that. Now look, I want to jump onto someone more exciting here. Jerome Luai. Give me a pitch. Give me the pitch as to why this guy is a must-have and why everyone should be hopping on this.
Jerome Luai this is a me special pick. This has nothing to do with Longy, so buyers beware. This is probably the first time in maybe 4 years that Luai hasn't had a real 7 next to him. And he's had a couple years where he's averaged 40 points. Now, he is going to do all the attacking for Penrith in the next couple of weeks. Everything's going to go through him. I don't know if you remember very early on in his career when he subbed in for Cleary during Origin and he just did everything. I think he scored like 90 points on debut or something from a fantasy perspective.
Damn.
And he's going to get that uptick in kick meters, and he's playing in a hell of a Penrith side, right? Like this Jack Cole guy that's come into the team, everyone seems pretty keen on him from a fantasy sort of perspective, but I think he's going to play like the Luai role of just doing barely any kicking and sort of letting Luai run the show. And you're going to see like the Jerome Luai that played for Samoa and the Jerome Luai that's going to be at the Tigers next year, where he plays the more dominant half role, but in a very good side with really good forwards and really good outside backs. And I haven't looked at their fixtures, but I think they play the Warriors this week. I think there's a real possibility that he averages 50 plus over the next 5 weeks. But keep in mind, he's a very short-term sort of buy.
Mate, that is a huge call. I thought it was more like 8 weeks for Cleary, isn't it?
Yes, but Brad Schneider's only out for a few weeks. So presumably when he's fit, he comes back in.
Yeah, good call. Yeah. I don't know. So if it's sort of a shorter period of time, the longer it is, the better your case is there, basically. So if it's a longer period of time, they're going to lean on Jerome as the dominant half. If it was 1 or 2 weeks, they'd probably just say, hey, stick to your role, and we won't change things up too much. Good buy schedule as well, so I don't mind it. 495k. I've thrown Cody Walker in, though, right next to him as a bit of a debate point, because I'm more of a Cody fan myself. And again, we can talk about guys averaging well in the past. Cody Walker's had years where he's averaged around 50. That was COVID ball, so it's a bit different. More recently, a 45-point average season. He's a guy who typically relies on attacking stats next to a dominant halfback. Unfortunately, Souths have lost all of their dominant halfbacks, and they've got Dion in the spot, who he looks like a good young player, but he went a whole game last week without kicking a ball. So I look at that and think, you know what? Cody Walker, back-to-back weeks with 300-plus kick meters, something he never has, right? He's priced in, sort of the mid-30s, I think it's 35 points. He's averaging about 33, which is pretty pathetic. But if Souths get any semblance of form through the Origin period, he's red hot. And you got a team where Latrell has allegedly tried to retire from Origin, at least for the year. You got Alex Johnston back. I'm looking at it and thinking, like, maybe they can put on a bit of a show against some depleted teams. Maybe he really takes over here. That base with the kick meters is pretty attractive. I just reckon he could be one of those guys who sort of scorches up for a while. And it's a pretty indefinite period with Hawkins and Ilias both out for a decent amount of time. So, look, they're both options. The South Sydney fixtures are not the best. I will throw that in. And I'm not getting on Cody Walker, but I've kind of thrown him in as a rebuttal against your Jerome Luai pick, really.
Look, I like Cody. He's a fantastic footballer, but Souths are struggling to field 17 players. Like, as good as he is, I don't know if there's a world where he can turn that around himself. Like, he's going to have games where he misses like 7 tackles a game and just gets run over. Like, the problem and the difference between the two is that Luai's playing in such a good side, like a top 4 quality side, and Cody Walker's playing in a side coming dead last. Maybe they can turn things around a little, but given how they played against the Dragons, my hopes aren't high.
Fair play. I'm keen to revisit this because, like, I'm totally open to the fact Luai could easily outscore Walker and vice versa. I'll have a look at it in a month's time. We'll sort of jump back on it. Kick out is the last one here, and look, he's a juicy pod. It's not that cheap either. So again, look, he's one you asked for. I'll let you lead the stage on this one.
So again, buyer beware. Viliami Kikau is not for the faint of heart. He's a guy I remember a couple of years ago. I bought him during the buy period, and I think he got injured and missed a game. And then I traded him out, and the next week he came back and scored 90 points. So he's the type of guy that could very easily sting you. But so the case for him is that the Bulldogs' buy schedule is phenomenal. They play the first 2 buy rounds, and their fixtures over the next couple of weeks are really, really nice. And he's playing 80 minutes on that edge, and you can tell if you watch a Bulldogs game, everything goes through the left edge. Everything goes through Kikau. And he's had 1 bad score in his last 5. His last 5 average is 47.5. He had a game against Penrith. Again, They have a much easier schedule coming up. But he's a guy that really has potential to score a lot of tries, create a lot of points, and really explode over the bye period. And that's something that I think gets talked about a lot, but doesn't really there's no real justification for why players get better. And it's when you're versing these teams with all their elite players out, and a side like the Dogs, who are going to have very few, if any, Origin players, they're going to have a full strength side, and they're going to be playing teams that are really under strength, underwhelmed, and Kickout's just going to kill them. Like, he had 0 tackle breaks against the Panthers. That's just not a Kickout stat. That's his lowest score. Every other game since then, he's had 57, 50, 40, 62. I think the only danger is what happens when Jacob Preston gets a bigger role in the team. Does he continue to play 80 minutes? I think that's the only question mark around him. But I'm really high on him as a sort of buy-round play.
He should play 80 minutes. And I'm completely with you there. For the guy like Kickout, it's looking at, right, are the playmakers of that team gonna play Origin, right? Matt Burton is a little bit of a risk to play Origin, not a major one, but he'd be on the ranking boards for that bench role, for the center role potentially. Probably not in considerations for the halves role, I would expect. But if he plays for the Dogs, then I'm with you there completely. It's a risky one. It's a really risky one, but it could be huge. And imagine winning your head-to-head matchups and shooting up the ranking board on the back of Kickout, like dominating. Like, how fun would that be to watch? I'm actually kind of talking myself into it now.
It'd be awesome, man. Like, he's only scored 1 try this year. Like, he's going to score more. Burton's going to feed him pill all day. Like, it's going to be great.
Yeah. Mate, he'll go to dummy half soon. All the back rowers, like Katoa did it last week, Dave Fafita. They're all scoring out dummy half now. But yeah, Kickout, I don't mind it. Look, these are crazy pods this week. They're all so risky, but they all could potentially pop off. You got to make your cash somehow this year. This could be the way potentially. All right, hold or sell. This will be pretty quick fire. Kai Pearce-Paul's the first one. He's a bit deeper, and the others are a bit more simple. For Kai Pearce-Paul, he's been named on the bench this week. You've got Frizzell and Dylan Lucas in the starting spots. A bit of talk that Frizzell might be in some doubt for this game. There's also very strange rotations going on at the Knights. It appears that Phoenix Crossland comes on at lock. You've got Hetherington, who sort of matches up with Safidi at the prop spot. You've got Frizzell moving into the other middle spot at times when Kai Pearce-Paul comes on. You've then got Brodie Jones, who comes on somewhere too. And ideally, Jaden Brayley sort of plays 80 minutes. Like, it's all over the place. You're a Knights fan, Jay-Z, so I'm going to throw it to you. Do you see Kai Pearce-Paul getting back to 80 minutes at some point? Is it just a management of a young player, or is it something else?
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, it's obviously hard to know what Adam O'Brien's thinking, but I actually, like, from a pure football perspective, I actually don't hate giving him a bit of a rest. Like you said, he's a younger guy. He's just getting used to playing in the NRL. It's his first season. He's been absolutely killing it. Like, he's been fantastic for us. Like, probably our best forward. And Dylan Lucas has been really good too. Frizzell's a forward leader. So I can see them sharing minutes a bit. I'd probably have to give it another week or two to make a proper judgment. I'd say keep an eye out for the late mail for this game. I don't know if he'll still be on the bench come an hour before kickoff. If he is, look, I'm happy either way. You can trade him. I'm going to hold him until at least round 13. And if he's not back to playing 80 by then, I'll probably trade him. I won't hold him any further. But I don't hate the idea of trading him now. If he's only playing 40 minutes, he's a sell.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I think the upside is so good, though. Like, the reason everyone got onto him is he's just a machine for fantasy production. And he hasn't really had those big attacking breakout games yet. He did have that one game where he just dominated, but he is an ideal, prototypical fantasy scorer. As someone who didn't get on KPP, I had enough back rows at the time. If he got a bit cheaper and then there was an injury to one of these guys and he got back to that 80-minute role, I'd be looking to buy him at 600K, even at 650K, especially with that buy schedule. So yeah, buy round 12. The other bit of advice I'd give is if you are selling him, he plays, I think it's the third game of the round. Make sure you're selling him for someone who plays after him and who is not heaps cheaper than him so that you can reverse that individual trade if he does get moved into the starting side. That would be my big piece of advice here, because there's a good chance that he moves into the starting side at the last minute or Frizzell's out or whatever it is, right? So just keep yourself open for that. I'll fire through a few of these. Max Plath is a firm hold. It's 1 week. It's a HIA. People are asking about it. hold on to him. The buy schedule is fantastic. He's got that middle half duel, which is so valuable at this time of year as well. So he's red hot. Brendan Piakura, I'm iffy on this one. So Piakura very easily, and I'm pretty confident will at some point this year have a stretch where he averages sort of 45 points for a period. He was like a 42 average last year when he played big minutes. I don't see any reason why he won't be that guy other than the fact that Reynolds is out. So maybe the playmaking is not going to feed him quite as much. But I think Piakura is a hold. Saying that, though, with the smaller rosters that we have in fantasy, I'm open to selling him if you need to, and if you can make a move to someone better. And for me, it's opening up right now to have a look at Piakura to Samuel Alfanu, for example, which from my perspective is moving from a guy who isn't doing it and could do it to moving to the guy who is doing what Piakura could do for an upgrade cost of about 90k. So I think that's a safe move to make, but I wouldn't be desperately trying to sell Piakura at this stage.
Yeah, I just don't think he's worth selling. Like he just there isn't a lot of movement that you can really do with him. Like unless there's a surefire gun, like cheapie, like a David Armstrong or something that you've missed that you need to jump on. Like it's a bit similar to Pierce Paul, where I think you could sell him if you don't have other issues. But again, I'm probably more conservative, and I'm trying to maintain some of my trades and not just run out of trades by the time round 13 comes around. And I fully agree. I think he'll have a stretch of like 40 to 45 average. He's going to score tries. He's playing in a really good Brisbane side. We're only really missing Adam Reynolds. A couple of their depth players got injured this week, but like they're going to score a lot of points. Piakura is going to score a lot of tries. He's had a few games this season where he's had try assists and line breaks. It hasn't matched up to fantasy. He also hasn't had a real like string of consecutive games. So give him a couple more games, I reckon, and he'll start to come good.
Yep, I'm with you there. I think he could come good, but he could also go to a spot where you got Guzevsky on the bench, and he becomes Halem Lukey, without the attacking upside of Lukey, right? And then it's a 50-minute roll. It's messy. I'm okay either way. As I think about it more, I'm more okay with selling. The buy schedule isn't crazy good either. I don't know. I held Sean Lane for a while, so I'm a bit scarred from these back rowers who just miss tackles and don't do anything for my fantasy team. So yeah, I'm leaning sell now actually. But Harry Grant is one that I would hard hold, and I know it sucks to lose a bit of cash on a player you've got. I know you want to get off before the cash sort of stops, but I think it's pretty clear that Harry Grant's the best hooker in fantasy. Obviously, we've had a couple of weaker scores recently. But you got 2 more weeks before the Origin period. You might as well just stick with that best hooker in fantasy. Hope you can have one of those big games. Because who else are you going to move him to? Like you move to Robson, who's going to be the hooker for the Blues. So why would you do that? You go Jeremy Marshall-King. He could easily get hurt in the next fortnight of footy. So maybe wait a bit longer just before round 13 to make that move. You're going to go Wade Egan? Really? Jaden Brayley's out next week. Like, what is there at hooker? Coruscant's hurt. Like, there's nothing. Mitch Kenny, he scores 30 a week and makes 44 tackles a week. Like, there's nothing. Joey Lustig's looking actually kind of decent at this point. Like, what would you do? I mean, you're a Harry Grant owner, aren't you? Jesus?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've had him the whole season.
What are you doing then?
There's nothing you're right. There's nothing you can do with him. He's just a hold. His buy schedule's not that bad. Like he's going to miss the 3 Origin games, but I don't think they miss any games outside of that. He'll probably only play like 60 minutes backing up some weeks, I imagine. But as long as you have a backup hooker like a Brayley or something that you can swap him out with, it's fine. I'm not convinced that Robson's going to be in the Origin side, by the way. I think it's probably going to be Appy and maybe McInnes might make the team as sort of a bench hooker / middle. But it's still a sideways trade.
He's a bit hobbled right now.
Yeah, I guess that sort of depends on how fit he is. Like if Coruscant's not fit, I think Robson is the starting hooker for sure. But I think they'll try and get Appy on the field. But yeah, like you can't really trade him to a Jeremy Marshall-King or a Reece Robson because they're just the same player. Like they're all averaging kind of the same amount. Jeremy Marshall-King a bit worse. Yeah, just hold him and pray he scores a 90 at some point.
I think you can get one, right? He's got Parramatta this week as well, who, It's yeah. Look, I'm not going to comment on Parramatta, but not great, not great at all. And then last section is sort of those injured guys, right? So Bateman, Turbo, Cleary, all these sorts of players. They're all sells, right? If they're out for anything over 4 weeks is guaranteed out. 3 weeks to 4 weeks is still most likely out. 1 to 2 weeks you can usually live with, but yeah, for these guys, it's a hard sell. I've had a few people asking about holding Cleary. Haven't you learned your lesson? Uh, how long are you going to sit there with that $1 million in the bank? So yeah, I mean, anything to add on this one?
No, they're pretty obvious sells. The only thing I'd add is Corey Waddell's probably a sell with Burbo back in the side and Olaquatu back from suspension. Yeah, pretty easy. He's back on the bench.
Yeah, Waddell. Yeah, good call. Yeah, he got a good score last week. If anyone held on to him, he'll probably get back into the team at some point as well. All right, cool. Let's keep rolling. So we've got a quick shout out to TBC here. So again, really just want to hammer this one. TBC, I've been playing a bunch. Jay-Z, have you tried the game yet, or am I going to have to sell you on it right now?
You're gonna have to sell me on it, mate.
All right. Well, this is a better ad then, right? So TBC, essentially, you log in. You've got sort of a chat functionality during the game, but the big thing is it's hooked into all the fantasy stats. So you can make a prediction on. I predict that this player is going to score a try in the next 5 minutes. I predict that Alex Twal will make 10 tackles in the next 10 minutes. Whatever it is, right? And people will vote for or against that. And depending on the popularity of your pick, if you're picking a real outsider, you get a bunch more points for that sort of pick. So it's almost like a footy IQ measurement app, really, but combined into a predictions game. So am I selling you on it pretty well?
That's interesting. Maybe you have to give it a whirl.
All right, man. Well, the link is in the description here, so you can download that. It's an app. I'll get you on, Jay-Z. We'll see how you go next week. Hopefully, as good as your fantasy rank, mate.
We can only hope.
Anyway, I'm not going to spring anything else on you, mate. The rest of it's predictable. This video. So cheapies, and this list is a lot of you should have done it last week, you should have done it the week before, kind of stuff. We're still going to talk about them. KO weeks is the first one. I want to put the brakes on KO weeks a little bit. So I got on KO weeks before he played a game because of the role, and I like the role, right? It's that dominant half role. He's next to Strange. We know what Strange does. I want to put the brakes on now, though, because people are talking about weeks like he's this locked in 50 average scorer and he's never going to deviate. He's rock solid. He's scored 52 weeks in a row. He'll be fine. He's not that guy, right? I would forecast him personally at maybe a 38 average, something like that. I think you're going to see some regression. You're going to have some quieter weeks where Canberra aren't as good as well. But at the same time, 339K, you got the dual position with only a buy in round 14. He's still a buy, but just temper those expectations is my advice.
Yeah, there's been probably a bit of chat about him being like a locked in into your 17 every week, like type guy. And while his base is pretty good and he makes like a fair few tackles for a smaller guy, I'm with you there. Like I think there was probably a moment in that Manly game where he was going to score 20 points until he scores that intercept try and until Canberra make like a ridiculous comeback. Like they were down 20-0. That game was over. Manly were about to score 60 points on them. And then they've just randomly come back into it. Like this Canberra side are not that good of a team. They aren't them, and I haven't looked at their fixtures, but they're going to struggle without Fogarty. Like he's a good player. And he's at the whim of Ricky Stewart. So like he could have a bad game and get dropped next week, despite having a good start. He's a buyer because his break even's -11 and he's getting 400 kick meters a week. But like he's not a for sure play in your team. Like you probably shouldn't be playing him every week. You shouldn't be relying on him in your team every week.
Yeah, I'm with you there. All right, so Jordan Rapana comes back. Is that a pro or a con? Because that'll be his third fullback in 3 weeks.
It's probably a pro. Like the Raiders probably get better with Jordan Rapana in the side. It's because he's such a competitor and he makes a lot of meters and starts their sets off well. But I don't think it affects him too much. Like Chevy Stewart wasn't setting the world on fire, but he was still supporting and following around the ruck and having a go. So I don't think that's going to change too much for him.
Yeah. I think a few uploads, maybe you could create a break or two for him. But yeah, I'm with you there. Dion Tiapa, look, 241k. It's a nice price. It's a half in a team that's struggling who didn't kick the ball once last week. So for me, it's a pretty easy one to skip. But the job security is reasonably solid because they got no one else. I know you're a big Souths guy. Are you interested at all in this? Would you be interested if we had squads of 25 or 30 maybe? Or is it just, not that interesting?
I think if South Sydney played the round 13 bye, he'd probably be more of a consideration. But
Yeah.
like a guy that's not kicking the ball in a side that's getting beaten by 30 points every week is probably not a buy unless that role changes. In all honesty, it's the one game of the weekend I missed, so I don't really know how he went or how he looked. But his stats didn't exactly, sing off the page.
Yeah, not jumping off the page. Dan Atkinson, next one here. So 326k. He was 264k last week. So you're paying a bit of a premium for this guy. Look, I went from completely disinterested in Daniel Atkinson to the biggest hype man about him in the space of that Nico Hines injury. So next to Nico Hines, and I'm going to stand by this, he is a 30-point a week plotter. He's in that, what's the word for it? The beta half roll, where he just sort of sits back. He makes some really nice runs, but he's not kicking the ball. He's not that dominant playmaker. He's not going to do much. He could score you 10 points in a given week. As the dominant half, though, last week, you look at that team, they had, Blake Brayley in the halves and then McInnes at hooker. There wasn't anyone who could kick a ball, so he just did everything. Last week, he scored 60 points. He will go back to being a bit of a plotter this week. I'm not certain that he will get past 450k as a player. I probably don't think he will get past that number. I think you'll see a nice little rise this week, next week, potentially, and then he'll really stunt off. He will play round 13, though. So there are some pluses and minuses, but I think it's too late, right? If you got him already, you're happy with how it's turned out. If you don't have him, don't buy him. He's nowhere near KO Weeks' guaranteed 50 points a week. That's a joke, by the way. But yeah, I would skip this guy. Do you disagree at all, or are you on that?
No, I'm in the same boat. It's too late. Like I think if you were going to buy him, you had to get on pretty much the first week he was named. There's a real chance he doesn't even play this week if Trindle's back. Like he's named in the reserves. Trindle is the 5'8" for this team. Like don't get it twisted. Atkinson had a fantastic game last week. Man of the match against the Melbourne Storm. Still going to get dropped for Trindle if he's available.
Yep.
And yeah, he also got saved by a few very like fantasy friendly stats. Like he goal kicked last week. He kicked a field goal, 538 kick meters. Like he probably won't kick more than 150 kick meters again in his life, unless he goes somewhere else. But yeah, next to Nico Hines and even Braden Trindle. Trindle's a 7 as well, if need be. So yeah, you're too late on him, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point you raised there, because even if he is the half next to Trindle in round 13, it's not going to be what we saw last week. Like he'll be the second fiddle. I think Trindle's average goes from, I checked it in the preseason, I reckon it was like 26 next to Nico and like 45 without Nico. So Trindle just absorbs that dominant half role, and he is that dominant half. So yeah, I'm with you there. I'll throw Armstrong in, 348k. You're a Knights fan, so obviously I'm guessing you're a big fan of this guy and what he's been doing so far, right? Like undefeated since he's been in the team.
Yeah, that's honestly, I can't believe like how good
Crazy,
he's
right?
been going. Like he wasn't even the fullback in New South Wales Cup until Fletcher Sharp got injured. But he's really taken to the role. Like like I'm so impressed with how he's gone. Like he can ball play. His support play is excellent. Like he scored a try backing up a Bradman Best break on the weekend. It's a shame he had to come off with that HIA. He looks really good, and I think as long as Newcastle keep going all right, he's going to hold that spot. He's probably fine to buy. I think he's maybe got another 100 to 150k in him. If he can keep scoring 40s, he's going to be fantastic. But again, temper your expectations with him a little. I think as our fixtures get a bit more difficult, and he stops scoring tries, he might not score as many points. But like he looks really good. He really passes the eye test. He's so quick. He's so sharp. That try he set up on the weekend for I think it was Greg,
Yeah.
was really well played. Like this guy can play footy.
Yeah, he cooked Bateman on that play as well. Poor Bateman stuck out in the centers, and he looks up and Armstrong's just like blinked around him. So yeah, no, I agree. He's a bit of a freak, but he has that 10, 15 point game in him 100%. Like it'll happen sometime pretty soon. So I wouldn't want to forecast him as a full-time starter in my team. But if you're getting KO weeks, Andy Armstrong, probably one of them will be a starter for you. So just really look at the fixtures each week and sort of make that call. Week's probably the more solid of the two. Ali Leotawa is the last guy here. So 300K. Look, I've chucked him in. He's been named. A few things to consider here. So RTS is due back round 17. Very friendly for Leotawa. You've got Rocco Berry due back round 14. If Ali plays well up to round 14, I don't think it's a guarantee that Berry comes back and takes that spot, though. Like, just from my side, I know the Warriors really rate Berry, right? But from my perspective, I don't think Berry has done enough to have that as a locked-in spot if Ali is absolutely killing it. So this is a guy where if you go and watch the reserve grade highlights and you rate him as much as a lot of people do, he's a guy you can take a gamble on for the talent at 300K. Personally, I don't need the 300K center. I'm going to save my center acquisition for Isaac Tungo in a few weeks' time. But if you want to get on that guy at 300K, big pod, back to talent, I don't mind it. You know much about him, or are you sort of just the same spot as I am, man?
So he's really good. I think he could be the Warriors' sort of Kale Hero. Like I think he's got that kind of fantasy scoring pedigree in him. Like he gets through his work, he can bust tackles, he can throw an offload if need be. The problem is that he's only available in wing fullback, and we have weeks. We have Armstrong, we have Kohler now this week. Who I mean, you could put in your centers, I suppose, but if you already have other centers, I think he's much of a muchness. Like he's probably one that you can let through to the keeper just because of the abundance of wing fullbacks we have. Really,
he's got the Penrith matchup this week as well. And he's got a halves pairing of Tamari Martin and Chance Nickel-Clockstad. So I don't think there are going to be many freebies for him this week. So you can afford to wait and see. Look, if he comes out and kills it, though, against Penrith and just has that work rate and creates for himself, if I saw a 35 out of him in that game, I'd probably be thinking, you know what, I should make space for this guy. So yeah, interesting one to watch. Keep an eye on this week. Not for but probably not a buy this week. Last group we got here is the watch list. So these are really interesting. They're all guys who are coming down in price. Greg Marzu has been on this list for about 4 weeks now. He's probably going to graduate from this list very soon. The only reason he's still on this list is because the Knights have the bye next week. But if you wanted to get Greg Marzu right now, you know, the matchup's not bad. He could potentially kill it because Knights are against the Titans, right? And you've got that Titans team. I'm going to read out the spine again for you. You've got Keanu Keeney. You've got Chris Randall as your 6, Sam Verrills at the halfback spot, and then Aaron Clark at hooker. And they could have put a good hooker at hooker, and they've just gone, nah, we're gonna mess it all up. We're just gonna jump it all together. It's crazy. It's crazy because injuries, right? The Titans have been good, but the injuries are just absolutely brutal. So, like, do you think the Knights dominate this game, or do you reckon the Titans will still turn up?
Look, it's hard to see a Des Hasler side rolling over and playing dead. Like, I think they'll be within 10 to 15 points. The problem is that they've lost Brimson now, and so all of their points have to come through Dave Fafita, really. Dave Fafita and Brian Kelly are kind of like their only attacking weapons. Keeney hasn't really kicked on into first grade, so we should win. I'm not going to say we're going to belt them because we're not that side. We're the type of team that like will bring other teams down to our level or play to the other team's level, depending on who we're playing, right? But I think Greg is a guy that's sort of picked up in the last couple of weeks. So he had a couple of weeks where he didn't break as many tackles, wasn't running as much. But I think he had like 9 tackle breaks last week. And so as soon as he starts scoring more tries, he has the potential to average 50, right? We saw that last year. So I don't hate it.
I love it. 59K. The more I look at it with that price, the more I just want to go and do it, eh? Like, because he could totally be that, you know, Brabden Best a month ago. We talked about that. You mentioned he's averaged like 60 points in the last 5 weeks. Marzu could easily be that guy as well on this Knights side. And the Knights play attacking footy. So, you know, different guys get the ball at different times. If you want to wing fullback, the more I look at it, the more I like it. I don't need a wing fullback right now. That's the issue for me. But yeah, would I pick him over Dom Young is sort of the question I'm asking in my head right now. Maybe. He's got the same upside, but without the downside. But I guess he's not that downside. Yeah, look, we'll talk about Marzu more. Marzu post round 12, we're going to do a big analysis on him. If you want to buy him right now, you're a mad dog and I respect it. Damien Cook, I know you and I are both so biased for the guys who have done it before. Damien Cook's done it before. Look, not a 65 average in his future. I'm not saying he's going to go back to that level, but a 55 average, could you see that panning out for him at some point this year?
I think so. I think like South Sydney just don't have the troops to not play Cook for 80 minutes. And I don't think they really have many guys coming back anytime soon. Like you probably expect Jairo to play Origin, so Mambazelis is probably going to spend more time in the middle, letting Cook play hooker for 80 minutes throughout the period. After round 13, I'm pretty keen on him. Like I think he's a real option. South have a buy in round 17, I think, which is like
easy.
Barely any relevant players are on buy that week, right? So he's one that I'm really strongly considering. And it's an issue that we have with a lot of these guys is that there's a buy in 2 weeks with so many. So do you want to get on a guy for 2 games when you can wait a couple of weeks and just get on him after? It's tough, right? Like, because he could realistically come out and score 60 points for the next 2 weeks, and then like you've justified the pick. But he could also come out and score like 45 to 50, and then you've spent like almost 700k on a guy that's doing pretty well but not the best when there are other options. So yeah, I'm high on him, but he's a wait and see.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think he's that guy, right? And when he's played the big minutes this year, he's been okay for his scoring. He could do better, but we actually streamed a draft league last week, and I was very, very confidently saying Damien Cook over Coruscant. I'm super happy with that. I was getting clowned for it. I've put it on record. I've made a bet with basically everyone on Discord that Damien Cook will outscore Coruscant over the next month of footy. So far, he's up 56 to 40, and Coruscant just never gets any healthier. So I reckon he's one of those top guys. And it's the same with Harry Grant. We're talking about him too. He's obviously a bit younger, but the guys who've done it before usually do it again. And even in terms of aging out, right? You can make that call. But we made that call on Sean Johnson. Look what he came back and did, right? Bad timing now that he's hurt, but the guys age out later on. I think Damien Cook can easily sort of heat back up. Preston's another one. So we know who Preston is. He will not be on the bench for Jamin Salmon for much longer. Like that can't happen. Like Preston and Kickout are 2 of the better back rowers I've seen, like in terms of a pairing for a club. And Salmon isn't one of those guys. I think he got his first tackle break the other week of the year. So, like, surely Preston, ideally, Preston has a shocker this week and then plays okay next week, but 80 minutes, and we can look at him at, 580k. If he was at that price, I'd be thinking, you know what, those dogs buys are really good. I'm going to hop on.
So the problem with Preston, and I agree with you. So in the preseason, you look at the Dogs pack and you go, okay, the middle's a bit weak, but they have 2 just really, really solid back rowers. Kick out the attacking threat. Preston's a bit of an all-rounder. And then we came into the season and Preston played 63 minutes, 70 minutes, 67 minutes. He hasn't played 80 minutes this season in any of his games. So he's one to watch in case, like, if Jamin Salmon gets injured, maybe you could consider Preston. And he kept like sort of regressing down to like the 550k area. But I just don't think, unless he plays 80 minutes, that you can warrant buying him because he's not a keeper. Unless he's playing 80 minutes, he's not a keeper level back rower. But he's definitely an interesting one. He did us all so well last year.
That's good insight. I hadn't realized the minutes there, and that is where that was the condition, right? Like he had to play 80 minutes. An 80-minute 40-point performance would be great. It's 60 minutes, 65, 70. You're losing sort of 20% of the production. So, yeah, and he had a lot of tries last year too. I still think he's very attractive, so I'm going to keep an eye on him. Bryce Cartwright's in a similar spot, but he's had that rib injury, which has absolutely plagued him. Not dropped on form or by merit or anything like that, just that rib pain. He'll probably slowly come back, so he's on the bench this week. If he gets down to sort of 450k and then gets that starting spot back, surefire, no-brainer, easy buy. So I think he's an easy one. Good buy schedule for Parramatta too. Isaac Tungo's the last one here, 595k. Are you eyeing him off, and what do you need to see over the next couple of weeks to get him for that round 13 buy?
So my worry with Tungo is that Cleary's not on the side, so he's probably not going to get as much ball, given he's on the right side, which is Cleary's sort of dominant edge. Unless Luai switches sides, which even then's not a guarantee. You know, as a Taylor May owner, I can tell you Jerome Luai does not like giving his centre the football. But he's the type of guy that can create points for himself. He's had a couple of underwhelming games the last few, but he's always due to go on a run. Like he's an absolute beast of a footballer, like one of the best centers in the competition. He can score 50 points without a try, which not many centers can do. I'd probably need to see him in the low 500s, given, as we sort of talked about, the abundance of centers and wing fullback options in the game at the moment. And Penrith only play the first buy round. If they played another buy round, I'd be a lot higher on him. But I think given they only play 13, and he's a keeper centre, don't get it twisted. If you buy him, he's in your side for the rest of the year, unless he gets injured. But only plays the first buy round, which I think is my issue with him.
Okay, yeah. See, I don't mind that as much. I've got a lot of guys who have I've got a pretty well set up team for the buy rounds. So I think I've got like 11-ish players for round 13 pre-trades this week. So from my side, I'm looking at a guy like him and thinking, you know what, I need to shore up my roster in terms of outside of those buy games. I want to get those discount keepers. And if the buy abundance isn't that great, I've got Herbie Farmworth already when it made that move. One of those guys. I've held a lot of the Canberra boys as well, who sort of cover a lot of that too. So I'm willing to take that move, but I think at 500k, even 550k, if you can get that keeper center at a discount, and you stick with him for the whole year and you don't think about it again, and he has a quiet game, a hot game, it doesn't really matter because he's a 7-figure guy. I think it's a locked-in move, but it'll depend on your roster, 100%. Anyway, that is buy, hold, sell this week. Jay-Z, just going to shout it out again, ranked 89th. So you got to listen to this guy. Do you have any parting words for everyone other than if they're close to your ranking, make some bad trades?
I think that's the main one. No, I think if you're willing to sort of get a bit spicy with it, buy Jerome Luai. That's my call. That's where I'm putting my flag down. I don't know if I have the confidence to do it myself, given he might play Origin, but I am so sure that he is going to average like 50 points over the next 5 weeks. So if you have a couple of spare trades that you've been hiding up your sleeve, Jerome Luai's the gun. Lock him in.
That is the mad doggest of mad dog moves. I'm going to get that quote and put it on Instagram, I think, because that's insane. I've got nothing that compares to that, to be honest. All I was going to say was don't chase last week's points with what you're doing. So even like Gus, we haven't talked about captains, right? But Gus Crichton's been on fire. That doesn't mean he's going to stay on fire. Don't be thinking that means that. You know, Bradman Best, Dom Young, don't go buy them for last week's score. Scott Drinkwater, don't avoid for last week's score. So that's the big one from my side. But buy Jerome Luai wins the day. Anyway, guys, best of luck this week. Hopefully you rise up the ranks. Hopefully no injuries this week. And we will see you on the next one. Peace out.